Hey, good afternoon to you. I just wanted to make a brief YouTube video and cover a few topics that may be of help to you. Last semester, for the very first time in the in-class technical communication course, I had one of our reference librarians named Sharon Sparks come into class, and she did a presentation on the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's a publication online through the U.S. government. So if you go into Google and you just type Occupational Outlook Handbook, it'll give you a synopsis as far as, like this one. This is one that she actually printed out for us, and it'll give you a summary of what type of work you do, your work environment, how to become one, your pay, your job outlook, similar occupations, and so on. But they'll give you a prediction as far as how much the workforce in that particular area is going to be expanding. And I'll give you a really good example. Last semester I had a student in an in-class course named Doug, and he was considering going through the electric utility line worker program, and he did some research on it, and there are plenty of job opportunities in that particular field. But he also saw that there are many accidents that occur because when you're working on utility lines, a lot of times it's during a snowstorm, rainstorm, thunder, or whatnot, you're called out. And, of course, they also are called to other states where they've had a hurricane or any number of different problems. So I would strongly encourage you to check out the Occupational Outlook Handbook. I also wanted to let you know as well is if you have reference questions in this class, we have a reference librarian available during the day from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and you can always call our library at 724-925-4100 and ask to speak to one of the reference librarians, and they are available to help you. If you live near enough, you can always make a 1-hour appointment and meet with them. There's also a website, and I had a student in class last summer. It's called Ask Here PA, and I think it's .org, or it might be .gov, but you can type it into Google, and it's called Ask Here PA. But you can get in contact with a reference librarian from our state 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then you can ask that individual questions that you may have. Someone in this class last summer didn't have a technical communication question. He had to write a paper for philosophy course, and he asked me what I knew about philosophy, and my knowledge was limited in that area. So I referred him to that site, and this reference librarian gave him some great information. And she also said, since you live in Latrobe, the Adams Memorial Library there has several books that you may want to consider, and you can also go to St. Vincent College Library. So those are some suggestions, that I would have for you. Now, if you had college writing at WCCC, you probably had this Brief Penguin Handbook. I would strongly encourage you to keep a handbook if you have one, or if you don't have one, you can always buy them at Amazon.com or Half.com, which is an eBay company, or one of those places. You can have a used one, but they're very useful. I also tell students to go to owl.english.purdue.edu, which is the online writing lab for Purdue University, and they have a really extensive handbook. You should actually bookmark that one. It's the online writing lab through Purdue University. Now, we used to use this book, the Prentice Hall Reference Guide for Professional Writing, and really it's made by the same company as this one, as the Brief Penguin Handbook. The difference, though, with the Prentice Hall Reference Guide for Professional Writing is they have a tab in here called Public and Professional Writing, where they cover business letters, memorandums, and lots of other documents more so. But these are also very inexpensive. At one time I used to require students to buy this book, but then figured I'd save some money and not require it. But if you ever want to have a good handbook, if you don't have one, this is another option that's available to you. There's a really good reference place online that I refer to for famous quotes, or they have a style guide there called Strunk and White's Elements of Style. They have lots of other good, useful information. It's called Bartleby.com, BARTLEBY.com, and they have a number of useful reference tools. They even have Gray's Anatomy. If you have to look up an anatomical term or reference, they have that. They have Robert's Rules of Order. So it's very, very useful, in my opinion. In some companies, in some organizations, you have to use what's called a style book. Obviously, if you're a journalist, you would have to use the Associated Press style book. And they have certain guidelines as far as how to, use certain information in, how to reference like the Queen of England or something. But they have, or how to hyphenate certain words and so on. So those would be some, that, you may have something like that. If you also check out Google, and if you type in NASA Style Guide, like the Air and Space Administration, they have a style guide for writers that they use, that they have to use, like, on board is hyphenated or something, or, space capsule, they might have hyphenated or spelled a certain way. But the point about it is certain organizations have certain ways of spelling, of leading into documents, of formatting, and so on. So those are some, like I said, that you may want to, you might want to check something out like that. I know that I've had a number of students that were in the School of Agriculture at Penn State, and they have a style guide that they have you follow for documents that you do. And I even know that Penn State University, they have style guide for writers for university publications, and they want to strive for consistency. I was in the U.S. Navy for 4 years. I worked as an administrative assistant, and we had the U.S. Naval Correspondence Guide. For example, in the military, the word on board as one word means you're boarding a naval vessel. So the captain of the Kitty Hawk is on board. So that's one word, okay? And then if we would use the word on board as two words, that means, are you in agreement with something? So, Mike, are you on board with this idea? So there's a difference between the on board as one word and two. And even in the military, the word material, M-A-T-E-R-I-A-L, or expendable items, pens, paper, things of that nature. But if you would use material, M-E-T-E-R-I-E-L, that would be like bombs, ordnance, things like that, airplane parts. So it was different. And we also had to, follow certain guidelines when we did a memorandum or a letter. And even in the military, this is a small nuance, but it's something that I would point out to you. If you're writing to someone at about your rank or above, you put respectfully. However, if you're writing to somebody at several, above you, then you write very respectfully. So I worked for Lieutenant Commander Dick Thomas in the Executive Officer's Administrative Office. And so if Lieutenant Commander Thomas had to send a memorandum to the safety officer, he was a commander, so he was one above him. So he would sign respectfully. But if he sent it to the captain or the admiral of our fleet, or the admiral of our battle group, really, he would always sign very respectfully. So small things like that were done, but they also wanted to make sure that internal correspondence, but also correspondence that we sent out, they followed certain guidelines and they followed a certain style, and even they wanted you to have your topic sentence and your main idea in the first couple sentences of your introductory paragraph. They like bullets, they like headings. And then they always, in the military, they always wanted you to say, what are you expecting at the very end of your document? Kind of like the ABC format that we follow in this class, but, do you want a response by this particular date? Is this for informational purposes? Is this a safety update? Whatever it is, that they really expected you to follow that. I had a student in this class, too, that worked for Caterpillar Heavy Equipment as a field technician, and he said that you had these templates that you followed. So, if you had a piece of a bulldozer, for example, or, one of those large trucks they use at the strip mines or at, other mines, he said if there was a failure of a piece of equipment, like of a bulldozer blade, crumbled, or it broke under stress, you had to follow specific information because engineering, safety in the company, legal, they all needed to know what the issue was. So, to figure out, was it customer result or was it a result of a lack of design on Caterpillar? So there again, like I said, did you follow standard style guidelines? I did want to mention to you as well, there's a planning form in our book in the very back part about it, and they ask you for your purpose, your audience, and other information, and then your document as far as like what you're going to be getting into, and that's very, very helpful, to do that for planning purposes. There's also, and I'm just trying to find it, yeah, on page 529 in our book, there is a web planning form, and that one gives you some ideas as far as planning, for a web design document, like if you're doing a basic website for a business or whatnot. That gives you good information in that regard. If you ever work with a group of people, especially a small group, and you're doing a project, maybe you're doing something for your church, or maybe Habitat for Humanity or whatnot, it does help to develop some basic guidelines as far as how you're going to set the document up. Are you going to use headings and subheadings? Do you want to use bullets? What's your approximate paragraph length? If you want to use certain keywords, or if you like to use transitions a certain way, it helps to develop basic informal style guidelines so everyone knows what it is that you're looking for. And, that is important. I've done projects. I've done some instructor guides for textbooks and so on. And I did one through Bedford St. Martin. And what they had us do was, like, I think I wrote 4 chapters of the instructor's manual guidelines. And, for example, they did not want us to use the word semester. We had to use the word term, which is a more generic term. They did not want us to use the word etc. They wanted us to use the word and so on. When we would reference parts of the textbook, they wanted us to reference it in a certain way. And so that's what I'm just trying to suggest to you. If you work on a project with people, you want to make it look like it's pretty consistent, overall. The part of the book that I really wanted to refer to today with you is chapter 17, which is style in technical communication, technical writing specifically. Take a look at pages 638 to talk about being concise, replacing long words with shorter ones. And they go on to page 643 as far as them being accurate. The active voice in technical writing is really, really important because it shows who is doing what. I observed the piece of equipment fail. So I saw it. So if you wrote is the piece of equipment failed, well, who observed it? So it's better to use the active voice. The reason why you would not want to use the active voice in technical writing is if you have bad news. So I cannot grant you a loan. Sometimes you don't want to say it that way, so you would use the passive voice. Commercial National Bank is unable to grant you a loan due to not meeting certain credit requirements. And so, but typically you want to use the active voice much, much more. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out to you, and I know there are some students in this class that are non-native speakers and writers of English. And this is a good example to mention for anyone, but especially for those of you that are native speakers of English. There's a part of the chapter called Plain English and Simplified English. And, you don't ever want to use words that may be misunderstood in another language, because in our country, sometimes we'll say if somebody is getting laid off, we'll use reduction in force, or we'll use the term right size. Just say the person was laid off or the person's contract was not renewed. That's simplified English, and that's what they really tell you to do. If you write for the U.S. government, like my sister Mary worked for the CIA, my brother Steve used to work for them, and now he works for the Department of Defense, they make you write in a very simplified English. So, like I said, I wanted to have you refer to that. In the very back of this, they have a basic handbook, with some information you may want to, to check out. I just wanted, the last thing that I really wanted to do today was just to tell you a couple of the key chapters to look at. Please look at chapter 1. That's probably one of the better chapters in the book. Chapter 2 talks about process and technical communication. Chapter 3 is on collaboration. Chapter 4, I want you to read about 3 times. It's on organizing information. They talk about the ABC format. They talk about document layout, which is so important. Definitely look at that. Chapter 5 goes also into document design. Read that through a couple times, especially elements for navigation, which starts on page 135. Correspondence, that's memos, letters, and email. I would definitely look through that. There's a question on a quiz that we do for this class that specifically asks about writing effective letters, okay? Chapter 7, not so much. Chapter 8 on process explanation and instructions. Absolutely, that's probably one of the most critical chapters. On pages 223 to pages 233, there's a whole chapter on writing really good, effective instructions. They use examples too pretty well at the ends of these chapters, like on pages 244 and 245. Notice the difference in format. On making travel arrangements, it's in paragraph format, and then look at it on 245. Vast difference as far as that goes. Technical research, chapter 9, will be of some benefit to you. Talks about the APA and MLA format a little bit. Formatting reports and proposals, chapter 10. You should definitely look at that, because sometimes in the course of your work, you're going to do letter proposals, email proposals, and also memo proposals, and you'll do the same thing with reports. I've done all of them, so sometimes you'll do longer reports, but some of them will be email reports, email memos, or letter reports. So anyhow, just wanted to mention that. Chapter 10 also gets into, they get into longer formal reports. So, and then reports for information analysis. Many of you have done lab reports, equipment evaluation, and things of that nature. So that's in that chapter. Proposals are in chapter 12, and we do a proposal for the written instructions and also the the consumer report. 13 is on graphics. I actually asked a quiz question on that, so just gives you some suggestions on graphics. Chapter 14 I referred to on web page writing and writing for the web. 15 is on presentations, which we really don't get into for this class. I do for my in-class courses. 16 is on the job search, which you probably should refer to when we do the resume assignment. And then chapter 17 is on writing more effectively, style and technical writing, and so on. So when you're done with this class, I would actually encourage you to keep that book. The book is actually quite good. I've used it through 6 editions, so I really like it. So I got to stop because sometimes when I get to closer to 20 minutes, these videos don't work. So that's it. Thank you.